Happy 4th of July to all who celebrate. I hope you guys started off your day by watching the greatest athletic event of all time and watching the greatest athlete of all time win his 16th title. That's right. Joey Chestnut, Jaws, won his 16th Nathan's hot dog eating contest. But we're not going to talk about that today. It is the 4th of July. That is a tradition. I love that every year. But I got the USA stuff on. Anyways, we're going to talk about the Chicago street race, talk about why, in my opinion, it's a success. And then I'm going to give you some numbers, statistic stuff from fan response to the race, driver response to the race, and the TV ratings, and the racing itself, of course, which is always most important. And let's start out with that. I feel like we should have known this was going to be a great race when on lap one, turn one, they were side by side for the lead. That's right, Tyler Reddick made a move side by side with Denny Hamlin fighting for the lead. Not even a 12th into the race, they were side by side for the lead, and I felt like that set the tone for the race. Yes, it was a bit of a downer right before the race with the rain delaying it and the Xfinity race getting called short. It was really seeming like this could be a massive disappointment of a weekend, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. It's not NASCAR's fault. It's not the city of Chicago's fault. It's just, what are the odds they get a torrential downpour the weekend of NASCAR? Like, what are the odds? So it seemed like it was going to be a disappointment, but NASCAR, the city, all of the workers did a fantastic job at getting this race going, getting the track ready. And I think we have to thank them all. All of us NASCAR fans, everyone who was a part of this event, they did fantastic. From the people who built the track, the city planners who kind of planned everything out, NASCAR itself for getting this done, every single person who worked on this Chicago street race, thank you to them. They did a fantastic job with the race in terms of an outsider's view from someone who watched from home. I'm not sure what the experience was like at the track. It seems like people were having a good time. There was a pretty good fan turnout, which is something I think is huge. So yeah, it seemed like there was a good crowd turnout and the TV ratings were good. So let's talk about the TV ratings next. So it says Chicago Cup Series street race is NBC Sports' most watched NASCAR race in 6 years. The Grant Park 220 averages total audience delivery, TAD, of 4.795 million viewers. Most watched Cup Series race since 2023 Daytona 500. The first city street race in series history is NBC Sports' most streamed NASCAR race ever. NBC Sports' 2023 two-race average is the best since 2017. It's the most watched NASCAR Cup Series race on NBC in 6 years since Indianapolis in 2017, which was 5.647 million, and NBC Sports' 8th most watched race under its current rights agreement, so since 2015, I believe. It's the most watched NASCAR Cup Series race on any network since the Daytona 500, which had 8.173 million, projected to be the most watched sporting event of the weekend. It was up 144% versus NBC Sports' second Cup Series race of the 2022 season, which was on the USA Network, 1.962 million at Road America. And it was up 72% versus NBC Sports' 2022 Cup Series average on NBC, which was 2.784 million. It was also the most streamed NASCAR Cup Series race in NBC Sports history with 163,500 viewers across Peacock and NBC Sports digital platforms. So yes, a lot of information there. I know a lot of numbers, but the point being, a lot of people watched this race. Almost 5 million people watched this race. They gave you the average down there. It said, 2.7 million was your average watch for 2022. And this was a big success in the TV world. As this said, really, the Daytona 500 is always going to get the biggest ratings because it's NASCAR Super Bowl. It's the beginning of the season. You're going to get that 8 to 12 million somewhere in there. And that's about what they got this year. As for other races, it can sometimes be unpredictable. Sometimes it depends on the track, the race, if it's an inaugural event like this one. And there was so much happening this weekend, from being a first ever event, not just in terms of like the Chicago street race, but being the first ever street race in NASCAR. Having international drivers in there like Jenson Button and eventual winner Shane Van Gisbergen, that also helped, I'm sure. But just overall, all the eyes were on NASCAR for this first ever event. And I think that's a great thing. And I think NASCAR experimenting with these different tracks, whether it's Bristol Dirt, Chicago street race, going to different types of tracks, I think it's a good thing. And I think this is kind of proving why it's a good thing. People are going to want to watch. People are going to see it. And I think they said at some point during the weekend, 70% of the people at the actual race were new race fans, people who had never been to a NASCAR event. So trying to reach out to that new audience who aren't NASCAR fans already, it's about reaching out to them. Yes, we have longtime NASCAR fans. Yes, NASCAR is still the majority in the southeast of the United States, but expanding that fan base is great. So yeah, and then in terms of the fan response, Jeff Gluck is a reporter, and he does his weekly "Was It a Good Race" poll. And here was the response from the fans, at least. It says, was the Chicago street race a good race? 84.5% of you said yes. If you lump it in with the road courses in the poll, it ranks 9 of 29. Number 4 race of 2023 so far, Kansas is the best. And the 5th most votes ever in the poll with 33,000 out of 281 races. So a lot of people wanted to respond to this tweet. Yes, it is not everyone, obviously, only 33,000 people, but the fact that that many people thought it was a good race, I thought that was an interesting stat line, I guess you could call it. But then there was the driver's response, and the driver seemed to enjoy it. Denny Hamlin, I think he talked about on his podcast that he was shocked that they got it in that day. He didn't think the track was going to be ready. He didn't think it was going to be prepared enough in terms of like with all the rain that had come through. But he was pleasantly surprised to see that they ran that race that day. And I think everyone was. I was kind of ready for a Monday race. I was like, I don't think this is happening today. But as I said at the beginning of the video, a big shout out to the crew who actually got this track ready. They did a great job. But here's some of the driver responses, just what they had to say. You can read them yourself. I'm just going to read a couple of them. But Ross Chastain said, congrats to NASCAR and NASCAR Chicago for pulling off an amazing event. I hope we continue to push the boundaries like this. It's good for business. Eric Jones said, let's do it again. Denny Hamlin said, thank you, Chicago. Thank you, NASCAR. Job well done. So Brad Keselowski, great views, fans and racing. See you, Chicago. So it seems like the drivers enjoyed this as well, whether it was the actual course, the scene. I know a lot of drivers were talking about seeing the fans through their car, on the fences and stuff, and then in the stands, and just seeing a lot of cool sights, made for a lot of cool pictures as well. And then, as I said earlier, the racing itself was pretty good. Those changing conditions from the wet to the semi-wet to the dry, even though there were still some wet areas of the track the entire race, like turn 10, turn 11, I think. It was still wet the majority of the race, so if you went offline, you were going to get in those standing water puddles. So those different conditions, lots of passing zones. We saw passes in turn 1. Shane Van Gisbergen made his pass for the win in turn 2 and also turn 4, kind of because Haley kind of fought back. We saw passes down into turn 6, turn 7. So there was a lot of areas to pass. The racing itself was pretty good, if you ask me. So yeah. As I said in this video, I think this race should stay on the NASCAR schedule. I think the NASCAR Chicago street race was a success. I think NASCAR should be happy, and the numbers prove it. The TV ratings, the fan response, the driver response. It seemed like everyone enjoyed this race, or at least the majority enjoyed this race. And if the city of Chicago, I know they have a new mayor. The old mayor is the one who made the deal for this, and if the new mayor wants to axe it, then I hope NASCAR goes somewhere else with a street course idea. The course for Chicago ended up working out really well. Just the layout of the track, the elevation changes, the passing zones, everything really worked out. And if they go to another city, I hope they can get something similar, that they can get a really good racetrack wherever it may be. If they decide to go out to the Northwest, whether it's, Portland or something, if they just want to go out west like a Denver, or somewhere in the Northeast like a Boston or New York, International, Mexico City, wherever it is, I hope they can get another good race in. But that's my argument right there. I think they should keep NASCAR Chicago street race on the schedule. So let me know your thoughts. Did you think it was a success? Did you enjoy the race? And of course, it was topped off a good race by a first-time winner, Shane Van Gisbergen, in his first ever NASCAR start. So lots of different appeals for this race. It seems like a lot of people watched it. A lot of positive momentum from NASCAR right now. I can't wait to see what this turns into in terms of the future, to see what they do with the schedule. But thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoy. Have a great rest of your day. And I'll see you in the next video.